Oh, good morning. Friday again, and I apologise I'm running a little bit late this morning, but here we are at the waterfall at Courthouse at the back of Lanark Lough. Good morning, Faye, hope you're well. Friday morning. Morning, Sharon Laverty, hope you're well. There we go, drone's eye view of the awesome waterfall. Morning, Karen, hope you're well. All good. Right, I'll give you one little look at the lagoon. There we go. Oh, and wee Ralph wants to get on the camera. Ralph, up. Come and say hello. Come and say hello. You want to keep on walking, don't you? You're just so excited. Right, everybody, here we go. Good morning. Morning, Murray, hope you're well. Now, well, Murray, if you're still watching, I'll show you the waterfall, give you a wee blurb. Look at that, you showed a waterfall the other day there, which was lovely. The sound effects from yours seemed far more intense than I'm able to get them. Right, everybody, here we go. We are on Follow the 12, part 12. This is the final part of this model that I do believe, or maybe it's because I see connections in Campbell's writings, the 12 steps of the fellowship, the 17 steps of the hero's journey by Campbell, and indeed the second coming of Christ that they talk about in the Bible is all being very interconnected, and therefore it makes sense, and therefore I choose to look at it through the lens, and therefore it becomes evident. Maybe it's not true, maybe it's just info in, and that's what you see on the way out. So step 12 of Joseph Campbell's hero journey, and I find this a very helpful model. It's not the only model I use, but I use this when I'm counselling or coaching clients because it allows them to, morning Gordon, it allows them to see where they're at in the journey, and if they can identify with what's called the hero's journey and reclaiming that which is lost or buried within them. Right, so step 12. Now, what I would have called this would have been Master of Two Worlds, because what you've done, or what we do every time we step out or embark on an adventure of change and challenges where we meet enemies and allies, and we have to fight or indeed accept the shadow archetypes of our own mind, this is not necessarily an external journey, although it can come in the form of an external journey. For me, it's an internal journey. It's a spiritual journey, and it's one where you meet many different aspects of yourself along the way. So we've had all the lessons, and now it's time to bring it home. Now, why I say it's the Master of Two Worlds is because for most of us, we live in a dualistic reality, okay? So that was identified in the book of Genesis. Since the fall, we entered into a world of dualism. In the garden, we were in a state of oneness and full connection, where the animals, we were living in a unified field of consciousness. And then, through the fall of man, because of our disobedience, we entered into a world of duality, okay, where things are right or wrong. You're either rich or poor, you're either male or female, black or white, sun and moon, and everything we see through our eyes is separate. Now, as we become a master of two worlds, that dualism merges back into wholeness, and where we are then able to sit and neither get caught up in what is good or what is bad, and some people would term that as enlightenment. My personal belief system is I believe that the mythology of the Bible, that mythical book that talks about the second coming of Christ, I don't believe it will be a manifestation of a man born on earth that will lead us through the trials and tribulations that humanity will face because of the destruction that we have created. But I think it will be a layer of consciousness where dualism will come back to wholeness. Now imagine for a moment what that would be like. Imagine for a moment how identified we have become to what we believe to be right and wrong and good and bad. Now I know that we could then enter into a moral debate, whereas if you just accepted everything, then we would accept the negative traits of humanity. But think beyond that. If we did accept everything as it was, of course there would be an adjustment period. But if there was no judgment for you to play your behaviour against, think, would there be any destructive, stealing, violent acts that humanity places upon one another? Now, as I'm recording this, we are on in the UK, I think, week 5/week 6 of the COVID-19 pandemic. Worldwide, we're probably looking at week, 14, 15 since its outbreak in China. The whole world has went into chaos, and I completely identify with those souls that are struggling, with people whose lives have been turned upside down, and indeed have absolute empathy for those that have lost family members and loved ones. But for a lot, they're finding order within chaos. A lot of people are taking this as an opportunity to get their, excuse my proverbial language, their shit together. They're using it as a point to reset and restart. Now, what if that analogy in itself, order within chaos, which I believe is the anarchy theory, I've not read that for about, goodness, God, what age would I have been then? About 19 or something, I was into that. Had the t-shirt and everything, anarchy theory. Anyway, how to explain dualism is where we're able to merge the body and the spirit, or the body and the mind, because we have viewed them as both separate, when in actual fact they're totally connected. And as I'm speaking, I don't plan these talks, just things come to my head and I start rabbling, right? When I was about 17, I must have just passed my test. You know, when you're driving a car that might not be mechanically sound. And this is where I started to notice that heart and mind, if you like, or intellect, or switched offness. And I live in Scotland, and I live between Glasgow and Edinburgh. I'm equidistant from both towns or cities, right? And I broke down in Edinburgh, and I broke down in Glasgow when I was 17. And this is how I've described it for going on nearly 30 years to people, and I still use this as an example. When I broke down in Edinburgh and you asked someone for directions, help or assistance, they would walk on. But when you broke down in Glasgow, they would actually take you to where it was you needed to go. And I'll tell you a story. I remember chapping my woman's door in Edinburgh and asked for assistance. And she went, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you." And I was like, "Right, okay, no problem." This was before mobile phones and all that carry on. And then I broke down in Glasgow, and probably what would be classified as quite a poor part of Glasgow in the East End. Don't know what I would have been doing at Castlemilk as a 17-year-old guy. Anyway, broke down, chapped a woman's door. I was like, "I broke down, is there any chance I could use your phone to phone my pals to come and get me?" She says, "Aye, come on in, son, and put 10 pence under the phone. It's at the end of the hall." And away I'd go, and I'd chap the door that I saw her coming out. I'd be like, "Right, listen, thanks very much, I've left you 50 pence under the phone." And she's like, "Come on in and sit down." And she'd point to a seat, and I was sitting in the seat, and there was 2 slices of toast and a cup of tea, sat, and I'm sitting, and she went, well, eat up, son. And she went, you might as well just sit there until your dad comes and picks you up, or whatever, your pals come and get you. And that's when I started to notice the dualism between both cities of Edinburgh, which I see as being very much associated to the mind, the intellect, completely switched off from the heart. Whereas Glasgow switched off for the intellect and just totally in their heart, completely and utterly in their heart. Glaswegians would do absolutely anything for you and get a heart of gold. So it's not that either of those is right or wrong. It's about how at this stage, after the trials and tribulations that we've went through, do we merge those two parts, those two very distinctive parts of our mind together. You could call that the yin and yang, the animus and the anime, the masculine and the feminine, but not meaning male or female, just meaning those qualities and how you merge those into one another and take this back to your world, which was ordinary, and be able to hold on to that so that people will learn by the example that you are rather than what you set out to teach. Right? So as I said, the body thinks in black and white, whereas the soul dances in colour. It's not that black and white is boring or indeed useless. And it's not that colour and the extravagance of the soul. And it's like looking at people, and I'm sure as I'm speaking here, you can identify with us. Have you ever met a professor, a lecturer, that is completely from here up, so clever and so switched on, but has absolutely no connection to his heart? He's just all intellect, right? How many people have met counsellors, therapists, leaders that you've spoke to, and they say the right thing to you? They've read it in a book. They understand the written word of it. But as they say it, there's absolutely no emotion behind it, right? On the same token, how many of you have met people, and there's a part of us who wants to be like them, that they have a colourful scarf draped around them. They spend afternoons in the park completely free of any worries, where they're just totally into being where they're at, and the arts and nature and creativity, and they're totally in receiving mode, right? The other ones are totally in doing mode, right? And it's not that neither of the two of those are wrong. They're just indicating and highlighting two very definitive aspects of our own personality or psyche. So we've been through this journey. We've went through the 12 steps of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and finding the hero within. The work now, as we did yesterday, was crossing the threshold, relying on our own power, finding our own direction. As I said yesterday, it's not about following a great mentor will not allow you to follow them for years. A good mentor's wish is that you will find your own mentor inside and start to act from that place and possibly even excel them, the teacher. A leader that stunts your growth, if you've been following them for 20 years or 25 years, that's keeping the power imbalance wrong. Church came to my mind there for some reason. Church came to my mind there. I don't know why, but I'm going to speak about it. When I was a wee boy and I used to go to church, the Bible used to get hummed in, you know, trumpeted in, right? And it used to get put up on the parapet, I think you call it, right? And the minister used to come in, right? It was like, this all cloaks on and robes and all that jazz, and used to come through very much in his power and silence. And he used to walk up the stairs and stand in the parapet, and he used to speak down to us, right? Now that's different today. If you walk into churches, that parapet is still there. I think you call it a parapet, I'm not that sure. But ministers now speak more at a level. But I'm wondering, Where are our spiritual leaders? Where are they? They're still talking to us. We're okay. We get some, certainly speaking for myself, right? It's just speak for me. I don't know about you, but speaking for me, when I go to church on a Sunday, it ticks a lot of boxes, right? So let's look at what it ticks for me scientifically. So when I go to church on a Sunday, I get to sing with people, right? I get to stand and I get to sing hymns. Love that. Scientifically, what does that do? Well, if you look at the evidence of people in orchestras, or those that are singing together, and they're wired up to a heart rate variability monitor, within several seconds of them singing at the same pace, their heart rate variability starts to line up completely perfectly and becomes in sync. Therefore, everybody's hearts that's playing in that moment, singing in that moment, is all beating at one. Therefore, the communication with the field of consciousness, the unified field of consciousness with all these hearts together, gives us a sense of oneness, of unity. So while I'm at and part of a congregation, I get a sense of that. As I'm at or sitting in my congregation and the scripture's being spoken to me, it's almost as if the scripture is speaking directly to where I'm at that moment, and you think, goodness, that's so aligned with exactly where I am and the healing that I needed today. But I've not got any resilience. I don't have any resilience. And then I walk out of church gates on a Sunday and boom, I just go straight back to how things were. So within that, whereas, and I'm using church as an example, it could be any form of practice that you do, right? It could be you go to yoga once a week. Do you practice it the rest of the week? It might be you go to a spin class. Is that the only exercise you do? It might be something that gives you the sense of connection and oneness. And what I'm questioning here, and for you to question, is, are you actually feeling the benefits of that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you're only doing it once for an hour every week, right? So I'm using the example of church. As long as we're looking for something outside of ourselves to save us, we're going to be disillusioned. Okay, so this is the part of the journey where we have to rely on source within us rather than source outside of ourselves. Again, back to duality. Where do we merge those two worlds as we move forward and start to take our message and our way of being? Because simply put, it's not to go out and get a soapbox and stand in Buchanan Street and start telling everybody that they need to change. Nobody listens to that, do you? You walk past somebody in Buchanan Street and the end of the world is coming. The end of the world is coming. And we're just like that bam pot, right? It's not about preaching. It's not necessarily about preaching what you've learned. And it's not that you're able to accurately describe what's happened to you on the journey. So the way that it was translated in days of old, when certain parts of our tribe members would go out on what could only be described as a hero's journey, to find water, or a quest for fire, or a quest for food, or a quest for vegetation. And they would go away out and they would go through valleys and troughs and find other tribes that would fight and get through. And they would get their goal and they would bring it back. And what they would do is they wouldn't relate that fact or act after act. What they would do is they would relate that in stories and storytelling. And that's where the art of storytelling and the way that we have learned is from our ancestors that have had an excellent capacity of being able to relate stories back to us. And that's how we relate, right? So, went away off on a bit of a tangent there again. So this is the part where we start to, we've been on the journey, we've got the gold, and it's taking the gold back. There's a battle that we don't want to return because it's a far more colourful place than the mundane. We've left the black and white and we've went to a colourful realm. But one way or the t'other is equally as destructive unless we can manage and start to learn how to have 1 foot in the river and 1 foot in the land. It's how we can stand in that liminal space between the beach and the water, where those two worlds meet. Definitely our ancestor in stories. Cool, Faye. So, we've went through the hero's journey. We're at step 12. We've done it all. My suggestions would be, and here we have it, the Eye of Horus again. The way to the kingdom of heaven is through the narrow gate, for through the wide gate leads to destruction and chaos, and the kingdom of heaven is within. As we can learn to through the centre of the third eye or the pineal gland, then we will seek salvation. That's how I see it. Up there ranting. Now, thank you very much. I'm at the 1st of May. I've finished my journey, but I'm not going to finish it there. I'm going to have a think about how I'm going to end this probably tomorrow. But learning, at least being seeking, at least being curious about how you can start to balance these two worlds, the world of the body and the world of the soul. And in the 12-step process of the fellowship, which I live my life by, once you have had a spiritual awakening, through working these steps, you carry the message to other people who are suffering. Now, as you've went through this 12-step journey in the fellowship, or even this 12-step journey, which is Joseph Campbell's work, or whatever steps you go through, the goal, if you like, but there is never really a goal. There is never really a goal, because you might have heard the statement, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Right? So once we've went through the 12 steps, and this is why there is 12 steps, and please do not listen to these new age coaches that say, forget the 12 steps, guys, I'll take you there in one. Don't, please pay heed to these people. They're absolute talking nonsense, right? We've worked the steps, we've worked the programme, we've went through the steps, we've dealt with our own shadows and demons. And when we get to a place where we've walked these 12 steps in the fellowship and we've reached sobriety, and then sobriety for a number of days, months or years, we're then in a position, and only then are we in a position to be able to take the message to other people that are suffering. Because why? Because we can navigate both worlds. We have got to a place where we can see how hurt, how traumatised, and how much suffering our life had become unmanageable due to our addictions. And we accept our addiction, and only then can we sit with another addict, I hate that word, another person that's in suffering, and relay the message of hope to them. Because until you've went through it and can own it in yourself, only then are you safe to be able to be with another person that's in that place, because then you're sitting between having one foot in the river of knowing your own experience, and you're sitting in one foot of the land, which is their world, and you can then master both worlds. Now, healing dualism and getting to this point and where we're at collectively in this pandemic week 5, 6 in the UK, and I'm just saying that as a footnote for myself, that I'm leaving as I've been doing these through this COVID-19, is I'm going to be wondering and curious what a world would be like with less dualism in it, with less attention spent on how much money the person has, what car he drives, how well qualified he is, how many days he's done, right? How many years sober he's been, because really none of that matters. I've learned more for folk in recovery that have got 3-month recovery under their belt than I have with some that's got 30 years recovery under their belt. So it absolutely doesn't matter. And until we can start to begin to dissolve the boundaries of duality, we will never be free from a system that's held us captive. Thank you very much for going through the 12 steps with me, and those of you that have given me private messages. And I really, really hope that it makes sense to you. And if it hasn't made sense to you now, and it's went in at some subconscious level, when you start to embark on a journey of change, you'll be able to reflect back in these and see where you are on the journey and how you can combat that and what you can rely on. I genuinely feel very blessed to have went through this with you, and you have a great day. Take care.